Welcome, welcome. This is a short class on healing sexual trauma, how elemental medicine can support you with this journey. My name is Sofia, and I work with the elements fire, air, earth, and water to support you to find the healer within yourself, to feel comfortable in being your own healer. And I share that in a variety of ways here on this YouTube channel. On the webpage there, elementalempressmedicine.com, there is a great blog as well you can check out. So yes, we will dive right into how the elements speak through and how I share about this. To simplify it is my major my major thing. So compassionate composting. I always like to start these sorts of topics, especially when they're more difficult, with, why put in the effort? Why go through the healing journey? What does it gift you? And I think that's an important thing to remember from the get-go, because it is hard sometimes and there are unknown things that pop up. So with compassionate composting, this shares that you have the power to transform your past into fertile soil for your future. The journey of healing provides you with wisdom, confidence, and self-awareness. When we decide to heal, I love compassionate composting because it relates the healing journey to nature, which is a lot of the practices that I do, is really connecting the inner and outer worlds, because nature has such beautiful ways of healing and we can take inspiration from that. And also it makes us feel like we're not alone, like we're part of something bigger than ourselves. And when we feel like we're part of something bigger than ourselves while we're healing, it really does help, and it helps us to move into spaces and places where we give back to society, where we start to, use our wisdom to help others and to help the planet. And with that, that's really the motivation, is that by integrating this experience, by no longer kind of pushing it away, suppressing it, leaving it in your unconscious mind, by really embracing it and letting it just come up and, breathing into it so that it can change, so that it can transform, you have confidence, because these unintegrated things, they really do affect us and our confidence, how much we want to share with the world. And that's the patterning I've seen with clients and sexual trauma, is like they could have all of these wonderful ideas they could want to share with the world, but there's this little tiny, like, dirty secret almost. It's like this feeling of being tarnished that just stops them from putting it all out there, or really standing on the stage and really shining their light into the world, because it's like, how could I do that when I have this, this trauma inside of me, or I've had these experiences? And I think deep down, there's this shame and blame around, having had those experiences, that there's something wrong. And, that infiltrates a lot of decision making when it comes into adulthood. And it may not seem like it, it may seem totally unrelated, but it is the root cause of many of these things of playing it small. And when you get this level of self-awareness for these traumatic patterns, it's very deep within yourself. It often goes back to childhood, infancy, and things like that. So when you gain a level of self-awareness where you can confidently look at things like that, it's daunting at first, but then after facing it and looking at it, it's like, wow, there's nothing I can't do. There's nothing I can't face, because I've faced this. I've, worked with this. I've seen my shadows, and the overwhelming sense of compassion that comes with that for yourself, and then by extension for other people, for the things that they feel and the things that they have experienced. It really does become quite tremendous, and when we're able to integrate that within ourselves. So how to integrate that? What does that even look like? Where does one begin? With elemental medicine, these types of issues and all kinds of issues can be simplified, as I was mentioning in the beginning. That's my main thing for people, is to just help them to simplify through the elements. It's an ancient wisdom. And because the society does make us think in many ways that these things are too complicated for us to handle or understand, and there's a confusion around it. So when we look at just 4 elements and see how they interplay, we can start to see these things as energetic patterns. And this just makes it a little bit less scary, a little bit less overwhelming. And we take this patterning in the energy body of sexual trauma, we come into the sacral chakra, the water element, and the root chakra with the earth element. The interplay between these two chakras is quite amazing. What they gift us to be able to do in our worlds, essentially. What I share about this is that manifestation, which is kind of short, quick things, comes from air and fire. An example of that is that, you think of something and it manifests very quickly. This is kind of small stuff, maybe a cup of coffee, a plane ticket, short-term resources, short-term experiences. It's like quick manifestation. You get a fiery desire for it, you speak it out into the world, maybe you say it to a friend, they offer you something, and the exchange happens, and it's very fast paced. This may have worked for you for some time, but the yearning then comes of wanting deeper, more long lasting creations in this world. And that's oftentimes when people come to face these kinds of traumas. And there's a lot, different kinds of traumatic patterns within the womb space, within the water body, and within the roots. We have birthing traumas, we have emotional traumas, we have, all kinds of things for the roots around values, family rejection, etc. So we have to kind of face these things and breathe into them for these two chakras to be helpful and to be portals of creation. And this is how it flows, is that when we are creating, we come into the sacral chakra. Rather than going from air through fire, we go down into the water, into our intuitive body. We go into our creative capacity through our intuition, our creative flow in the water element. And then we flow that through, we birth that through the root chakra. We birth it through the earth. And what that looks like is having an intuitive hit for a creation of a business that really resonates with your soul. And so you start to breathe it, the ideas, the mental imagery, the soul passion. Instead of forcing it upwards or bringing it upwards to speak about it with lots of people, you breathe it down into the body, into the abdomen. You start to see, how does it feel emotionally? How does this connect to me and my life? And then you breathe it down even further into your roots. How does it connect with your values? How can it provide you with more stability in your life? And then you bring it into the world. And honestly, that journey is better the less you say to people, not sharing so much with people about your dreams, etc., and just breathing it down into the body rather, and birthing it out into the world. And what we get from these kinds of creations, this kind of energetic creation pattern, is physical resources, a beautiful home, stable and supportive community. And this could be ending up in the country that really aligns with your soul and what you have to share with the world. It can be that your business starts really making significant, consistent income for you so that you feel really stable, like you can build off of it. We start to be able to create these kinds of things. And it does happen to be so that sometimes sexual trauma can block these kinds of creations because there's a fear of the sacral chakra. There's a fear of the root chakra because we are not sure what we're going to find within them. And this is where we can start to use elemental medicine and simple practices to start to look within. Okay, so that's our first step that we're going to look at here. Opening. Opening is when we allow information. And this is always where I start with clients. It's where I start with courses, is to open first and foremost. Of course, there's, in knowing different energetic patterns and potentially knowing the way the energy could shift or change to, support the person, that doesn't work to just go straight in and start moving stuff around in meditations or through reading energy, etc. The best way to start always is to observe, to become comfortable, because that's a large part of this patterning, is the discomfort, being uncomfortable in the body, being uncomfortable in sensuality and sexuality and intimacy. It's this discomfort that's caused all this, stuff. So if you go to a healer or you go to a practitioner that just invades again and moves things around very quickly without you getting comfortable, you're actually recreating a trauma wound once again. And that sometimes does happen, especially with plant medicines and certain types of shamanic medicine, because they can be quite intrusive, and they can go in a bit too quickly without the comfort level being there, and then rewound. So just to avoid doing that, to allow yourself the compassion and the space, it's about opening first to observe the being, to observe your physical body. So one of the most difficult parts of healing sexual trauma is the inability to be able to connect with the body. And this comes from the fear of the unknown. So when we take this into the water element, we can see a reflection of this in the external realm by envisaging a pool of water along a river. And potentially there's a little waterfall, or the river is moving along and there's a pool of water and it's dark and you don't know what's in it. And, seeing yourself in a country where there isn't crocodiles or there isn't large animals in the water, like, you technically know that it's safe. Like, you know that there's probably nothing in that water. There's just rocks underneath and it's all safe and you could just walk into it. But there's this irrational fear, or this fear in general, that you don't want to walk into that water because you don't know what's underneath it. And same goes for the ocean. You see people jumping into the ocean, you don't know what's underneath your feet, and this can be quite a large fear. Then, logically, I'm not going to touch anything with my feet. I can see these people, but I'm scared. And this comes from the water element, and it shows us that we do fear, or that person who's experiencing that, and when they come close to water, has a fear of what is at the depths of their emotional body, and what is within their sacral, within their abdomen, within their emotional being. And so when we have this fear of the unknown, we're not able to determine, we're not able to predetermine what this water is going to share, how we will react to what comes up. It's all an unknown experience. And yes, it's like swimming in our own inner waters is quite a journey. And I love guiding people to do that in meditation, where they feel safe, because it's like, oh my goodness, this is what my inner water feels like. And we can start to get to know it, because, as we all know, the unknown beast within is always much more scary than the known one. We always, do better when we know what's going on. And it's similar to the analogy of, like, finances. If you're fearful or worried about money, and then you don't look at your bank account and you don't do your budgeting, and it's like, oh my God, I don't know. And then, you actually take a moment to just do the budget, look at what you have, look at where money's going. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. Like, that's all good. Like, maybe I need to do this or that to balance things, or whatever the case may be. But, yeah, it's the unknown that really triggers and really causes that damage. And so the same goes for this kind of patterning with sexual abuse, where we open up and we start to just observe and see what is in my roots, what is in my sacral, how can I be present with that energy, how can I be open to what it has to share with me. And this is a quite transformational journey. I mean, I feel so honored to have been people's guide on this journey for healing, because the compassion that comes through, the love that comes through, when I start to guide inward, it's like expectation of, these traumatic, painful emotions, but oftentimes it is love and acceptance, and just connecting even with ancestral realms, or, energetically with the people that may have been involved with that trauma. Again, there's just compassion and just, apologies and awareness and just openness, is the best way that I can describe it. And that all comes from the bravery of people going and connecting with the physical body, because that is the home, that is the anchor to where the energetic pattern is stored within the body. It may seem ethereal, it may seem like it's just in your mind, but when we start to actually breathe in and feel it in the body, there's another interesting layer. This isn't going to be for everyone, but some people, there's a very big avoidance and sometimes story of, like, did that actually happen? Am I just making this up? Kind of thing. And when we actually get to feel the sensation in the body, we get to feel what's present. It's this also big relief of, like, oh my goodness, thank you, because I feel validated for how I feel and what has happened. And that alone even releases energy and opens up the energetic field that bit more. Going deeper with this understanding of, well, how do I connect with the body? How do I start to interpret this energetic pattern to heal the sexual trauma? We come into body language, and this is where fire, air, earth, and water have your back all the way, every day of the week. They are so awesome for just connecting in and learning the symbolic language of your body. With fire, we have the solar plexus. With air, we have the throat and the heart. With earth, we have the root. And with water, we have the sacral. And so when we start to see and feel the body in through the lens of the elements, then we can start to interpret how energy is flowing or how it is not flowing. And this language, it works so well because it's an ancient wisdom. The elements are what we are made of. And it's also what the world around us is made of. So we can see the reflection externally as well. And we can start to use the elements in the external realm to also help us. So, for example, if there are some difficult limiting beliefs that have manifested from this abuse pattern, there are some hardships, really tough past hardships that have been looked at, and you're just aware of them, and it's like, cool, but like it's still sticking around. We can use fire to burn those things away, to release them, moving and putting them on paper. And then when we burn them, we create the substance of ash. And ash is such a beautiful, pure substance. It's a pure substance that cannot be transmuted any further. That's why we have this saying of the phoenix rising from the ashes. And so when we burn things to ash, this is a physical representation in the external realm that I have let this go. And then we can put that ash into the earth. And we start to feel, most importantly, we feel supported by the world around us and by the world within us. And when we have that support feeling, which is really what at the end of the day causes the retention of trauma, the retention of these painful vibrations, we feel supported, we can start letting it go. We let go of the energy in the body. We let go of the tension in the mind, and we just keep on letting it go. And we can use the elements, all four, in different ways externally to do that. And then we can also do that, of course, internally to flow with the energy. And so, like I was saying in the beginning, why go on this journey? Why heal this patterning? Because when you heal something like that, by using this, you create a sense of trust. You create a sense of connectedness to these deeper ways of healing, to your inner strength to move through anything. When you start to be able to transmute energy in this way, it's like, wow, I can do that. I can now move towards my soul purpose. I can help other people with this pattern. There's a sense of activation that comes from it because you've mastered. It's like when you get something really hard to do, like a master's, or, doing college or a PhD or a job that you kind of went in and you weren't fully equipped for, and you just rose to the challenge and you did it. These obstacles, this is what activates our fire within and helps us to overcome things. And this grows the light of our soul and supports us in being in a higher connection with source energy, which creates the opportunity to channel more abundance, to channel more energy into our lives. And yeah, that's in short what the elements allow us to do in many ways. And it all starts with the body. It all starts with our body language. So let's touch on a little bit more specifically how the elements connect into sensuality, sexuality, intimacy. So we see the water element in sensuality, which has an interesting interplay with air in the heart and earth in the roots. And so sensuality is that place, within obviously the abdomen, as I've been mentioning, and the intuitive gut brain. And then it also is the water that moves throughout our body. So it opens us up to sensation, sensuality and sensation. And so this can have a knock-on effect with any kind of sexual abuse where our boundaries have been crossed. We have sensed things. We have had sensuality in places where we don't understand them. We did not invite them. We may not have been prepared to communicate at that time, etc. And so there's a sense of like mistrust in sensuality, and it can become very hard then to experience sensuality, even by someone just touching your arm, or going into deeper levels of intimacy with people. You may notice that you pull yourself away, you disembody because you're not comfortable with sensuality anymore, because there's this unknown aspect to it. There's this trauma pattern living within it. And how this can really fester. So there's the alignment of the elements, which I was explaining a little bit there, where when you have alignment, you can just create amazing things. You can manifest wonderful things, and you can feel beautiful energy and channel beautiful energy in your life and in your body. However, when you have something that is out of balance, that is feeling a little bit distorted, like this sensuality patterning not feeling so great within the sacral chakra and the abdomen area, it twists and turns and affects the root. It affects how we feel about letting in earth energy, about how we feel about grounding. And that translates in life to potentially how we feel about having children, how we feel about having long-term relationships, how we feel about building a home. And so this can really come in and sit in the sensuality, but affect the root. And then it can also affect the heart, because the heart is, a big opening point for our higher vibrational feelings about life. And then it also is the home that we connect to speak our truth. And if the sensuality, if the womb space and the sacral, that whole area of the body is has been violated and it hasn't been healed, then there is a sense of like, oh no, I don't want to speak my truth. There's a closing of the throat chakra, and there's a closing of the lower pelvis as well. So we have this complete lockdown, this lockdown patterning, which I want to note is such a beautiful thing. There is nothing wrong with the fact that the body can just lock itself. It's wonderful. It means it can protect you, and it's the way that it is protecting you, and it's keeping you safe. So it's like, thank you, thank you so much for it just keeping me safe and finding a way to do that in a difficult situation. And that's always where I like to start, is just like, all of you is welcome here. Like, thank you for what you've done and how you've managed through this time, so just like, thank you for a starting point and just awareness of like, I was and am doing the best that I can with what I know at this time, and I always have been. And from that sense of gratitude and like welcoming and like, oof, okay, it's great that my body can do that to help me move through these times, then we can move into starting to think, okay, well, I kind of feel finished with that tightening, with that closing off from the world. I'd like to relax a little bit more and figure out ways to have good boundaries so that I feel safe. And then we can start on the journey with sensuality, with having these boundaries and feeling safe, and then asking yourself, checking in, do I feel safe doing this? Do I feel safe doing that? How can I have these? Earth is those boundaries, and that we sink into, and we can have really good ones with people. We can have good boundaries with money, with our home. When we start to establish all of these external boundaries in the external world, then the internal can start to relax. And really just meeting yourself where you are, because there's no point in comparing. That one person feels very safe going out, meeting lots of people, not really having, much discrepancy about their personal space. They may just be super chill about all of that stuff. And that, if that's you, that's perfect. But if you feel like for this time, while you're moving through and working with this energetic pattern, that no one comes into your room, that you have your own like space, like if you have a partner, you have your own room, or you don't go out and meet people at certain times, like late at night, if that makes you uncomfortable. Like, so you just create these boundaries and you just stick with them. And it's like, okay, well, I've managed to make a safety bubble. This is my safety bubble. And you can just keep checking in with yourself about how that can shift and change. And that's how safety works. We find a place that makes us feel safe. And then when we sink into that safety, it usually expands, it usually relaxes, and we can feel safe in larger and larger bubbles, or in different circumstances that are less constricted. But we have to start where we are when it comes to sensuality. And this comes very much into consent and sexuality and conscious partnerships, because we have to be able to vocalize. And that's when we come into the heart and we come into the throat, in the air. So we need to be able to vocalize where we are. And to vocalize that, we need to be confident and know where we are, and be able to share that with other people, be that a friend, a roommate, a partner, a coworker, to say, actually, I don't really feel comfortable when you touch my arm. That's just, it's not personal. I just don't feel comfortable. And, just letting that be as it is. Same with your partner, being able to communicate how you would like intimacy to be, and where you would like to start, and how you see it progressing, and continuing the conversation with them. And when you're able to open your heart just that little bit, with your communication, you invite other people in to help you. And this is feeding into your sense of safety about the world as well, because you're able to say, I feel uncomfortable. You're able to say, I need space. And this invites other people in to just be like, okay, I hear you, I see you. Because other people, even if they haven't experienced this trauma pattern, which I assure you many, many people have, they have some sort of trauma pattern that they know they have also conditions for, that they may not even have ever shared with you. But just, knowing that people will understand. It's okay to vocalize these things, and it will help you to feel safe. Touching on healing these wounds, like how can you go about it? We've talked about it energetically quite a bit here. how things can flow. So just healing the wounds on a practical level. That's also something I love to share, is just like, okay, cool. I see it, I hear it, I feel it. Like, what do I do? And so we have some practical things here that I share, which is around meditation. So I do share guided meditations with one-on-one clients, and I do have an elemental medicine school as well that shares plenty of guided meditations, and it takes people on a beautiful 3-month journey to connect with the elements, to learn this ancient language, and becoming, I always share that it's like becoming literate in the elemental language. So those guided meditations are kind of what I was speaking about here, with just feeling comfortable going into the body, taking it slow, observing first, and then breathing in second, and starting to see, well, what is there? How can I communicate with my own energy? And meditation is a wonderful, safe space to do that, because it's absolutely private and you have full control. And those two things are wonderful for all kinds of healing, and of course with this patterning as well, because that's a large part of the issue, and a large part of the trigger is not being able to pull yourself away and not being able to have control. So we have those two, and we can start to feel comfortable with ourselves once again. So flow writing is a way to bring out the unconscious things that are happening for you into the light of your awareness. And I love using the analogy of putting, black pen. If you were to imagine using a black pen on a white page, it's like you're literally pulling out the unseen, the darkness, not dark in a bad way, just dark as in you can't see it, and the unconscious realm, which is the water element, and you're bringing it into the fire, the white page, which is the awareness that you have. So you're pulling it out and you're pulling it out and you're pulling it out. And this is part of the dark water analogy that I gave there. If you know what's in the water, you'll be much more comfortable going into it and swimming in it, and just being present with your own emotions. When you can flow write them out, and just sharing flow writing in a simple sense. I share more extensively about it, but just in a simple sense for this little bit here, it's just about taking out your piece of paper and a pen. I do encourage having a little bit of structure, like the date. If you are a woman, I share about, writing down the day of cycle that you're on, so that you can see how your menstrual cycle plays in with your emotions and how things feel for you, because this can also relate in with sexual trauma, that there may be anovulatory cycles, you may be struggling with your fertility, etc. So just knowing what cycle day you're on to bring that level of awareness in as well. And then just writing, literally trying to just write whatever comes to mind, and using the connection with the water element to facilitate your deepening of your writing exercise. And what that means is that writing first thing in the morning when you're closest to the nighttime is very helpful to flow write about your emotions. Similarly, when the sun has gone down at the end of the day. And so when you start to write close to nighttime, this is when you're connected with the unconscious realm. You're close to sleep as well. So, and of course, it's different, obviously, if you do it in the morning or the evening. If you write in the middle of the day, it can just be quite masculine, like a shopping list, a little bit more like forward focused kind of vibe. So yeah, just knowing when you're writing, and then just flow writing, how are you feeling today? What's happened? What's coming up for you? And yeah, I share like different reflective questions as well to just help the deepening of that process. Connecting with a guide is wonderful. This is quite a deep patterning to work with. I've always had to work with people very deeply for it. And yeah, if you have someone, different resonance for everyone, for where everyone is at. For psychology, it works very much with the mind. The medical is obviously very much with medicine. And we have different, like shamanic realms tend to work with the physical and the mental and the spiritual, and they move between those three, and that's how they support and align things. So I work in a shamanic way as a guide, and I share obviously about the elements and the interconnectedness of your being, and how you can bring those three realities together to feel safe. So that's the kind of guiding that I share with people in the Elemental Medicine School and in private as well. So trusting your intuition is also a beautiful way to heal the wound, to just really, again, as I was mentioning with sensuality, your intuition is connected obviously to your water, but it's also connected to your roots. It's like how you inform your boundaries is through your intuition. So this is starting to get that interplay. And sometimes that's when there's trauma within the root, there's trauma within the sacral, they stop communicating with each other. Water and fire stop being friends. And then it's really hard to intuit your surroundings, intuit your boundaries, intuit opportunities even that come into your orbit, because it's like, can I trust this person? Is this a good boundary to have? So if your intuition isn't feeling like you can't rely on it because it's like has this trauma in it and your water is not really flowing that much, then it can be very hard to trust your intuition to set those healthy boundaries. So that's where we start to breathe into the water, to clear the water energy. Your intuition becomes much stronger and you can start to intuit. But all the same, you know, whatever your intuition is telling you right now around foods to eat, your schedule, human contact, all of these kinds of things, trust it, you know, trust it, because a large part of the trauma wound is having gone into situations where your intuition was like, no, no, no. And you went into them anyway because of whatever reason, you know, can't even go back to childhood where you just weren't aware in different things like that. But yes, that is a large part of it. So it's like the rebuilding of trust with your intuition is hugely, hugely important in this patterning. So as you meditate, as you flow right, as you have your support, this is really great to just trust your intuition. And just finally as well, on connecting with a guide, whoever is like comes into your reality. And it's very interesting to note, if you ask for help or you're like, I'd like some support healing these wounds, universe, like who should I go to? And just notice like names that pop to mind, resources, maybe an email comes into your inbox. It's very interesting to note that. And with that, it is a healing of the earth. Like it helps you from a root chakra place, because when you get a guide, then you set times and you have boundaries and you have exercises, you put time aside for your healing. So the time and the structure represent the earth element. And so you're healing your root chakra by having that structure and by having that support. Another earth element aspect is like that supportive nature. And so we can think about these things, you know, for years, but until we take earthly action and we do something different, we get support from somewhere, we, you know, take time to do the things, nothing really changes, you know, and that's really the motive for people, is to have changes in their earthly realm, be that to have a relationship or to have a home, etc. So yeah, just knowing that the first step is not going to be jumping into that new life that you've been envisaging. The first step can be, you know, getting support for that. And I often struggled with that along my healing journey. I'm like, oh my goodness, I just asked the universe for this thing. I was so clear. And now I have all these messages on, you know, my phone, or I have like people reaching out and, you know, wanting to offer support in some kind. And, you know, that's not what I asked for. So I kind of reflected on that afterwards and I was like, oh, okay. It was offering me the things that I wanted. It just was, you know, giving me the first step, not the 21st. So just something to note if that's happening to you as well as you move through this healing. Alrighty, thank you so much for taking the time. If you'd like to dive into some more resources, as I mentioned, there is that blog on the Elemental Empress Medicine webpage. You can also check out the Elemental Medicine School. That is an online course that is accessible today. You can have full access to the course, and it's all recorded and there for you whenever you need. And if you have any personal questions you want to request about personal coaching, you can email to heal@elementalempressmedicine.com, and I will be back to you shortly. Have a beautiful day.